The room was silent, save for the subtle hum of the containment field. A room carved from the very fabric of space itself, suspended in the heart of the Galactic Council's most secretive base. It was not just a room, but a stage, a witness to countless executions, betrayals, and moments of cosmic importance. Today was no different. ... Or so they thought. I, Ragnar, High Executor of the Seventh Quadrant, stood at the center of this vast chamber. My voice echoed against the walls, as it had done countless times before. The faces of the galaxy's most powerful beings, from the crystalline Petra Collective to the gaseous Mistwalkers, watched in anticipation, their strange eyes gleaming with excitement. Today's spectacle, they all believed, would be just another demonstration of our superiority, of how we, the Council, maintained control over the lesser species that dared to cross us. But today, something was different. Today, I would witness something that would change the course of galactic history. The prisoner was human. Alexandra Mason, captain of the Earth vessel Star Wanderer, who had dared to challenge our empire. For months, she had evaded capture, using every trick her primitive species could muster to delay her inevitable fate. But in the end, she was caught. Her ship, disabled, drifting through the void like an insect caught in a spider's web. She stood before us, restrained in the heart of the execution chamber, her fate sealed by the judgment of the Galactic Council. "Bring forth the specimen," I commanded. My voice reverberated through the chamber, the energy in the air shifting. With my words, the containment field activated with a low hum, and within it, suspended by gravitational restraints, floated Alexandra Mason. Her body was limp, but her eyes, those strange human eyes, locked onto mine with an intensity that no other species had ever dared to muster. Alexandra Mason, you stand before the Galactic Council, accused of defying the natural order, your species. Your existence has become a threat to the balance of power that we have spent millennia constructing, I announced, my voice dripping with disdain. But she didn't flinch. She didn't even flinch. Instead, her lips curled into that infuriating smile. That same smile she had worn when we first captured her, and the same smile she wore now, despite knowing what awaited her. "You really love the sound of your own voice, don't you, Ragnar?" she said, her voice carrying a strange, defiant amusement. The room fell into an uneasy silence. Never had a condemned prisoner spoken so casually to me. To us. How dare she? The nerve, the audacity. "Begin the extraction sequence," I ordered, my voice shaking with anger. "Let us show this human the price of defiance." The field hummed, and specialized probes began to emerge, their sharp tips gleaming in the harsh, artificial light. As they hovered near her body, Alexandra's gaze never left mine. The probes began their work, and for a moment, I thought I saw her twitch in discomfort. But no. Her expression remained calm, almost serene. "We've had plenty of practice dealing with pain," she muttered, her voice carrying a strange calm. "We're not as fragile as you think." I could feel the eyes of the Council on me, their judgment inescapable. The human species had long been regarded as primitive, barely worthy of note. We had watched as their tiny ships ventured into space. Barely a blip in the grand scheme of the galaxy, they had no place here. They had no place among us. The extraction probes intensified their work, the pain growing unbearable for her, and yet she never cried out. Her heart rate remained steady, her vital signs seemingly unaffected by the horrific procedure. Fascinating, I thought, but also infuriating. This human's pain tolerance is beyond our expectations. Miravel, the chief scientist, murmured, her tentacles dancing across her data interface. "It appears she is not reacting as we anticipated. The neural pathways are ... unusual." But Alexandra only laughed. "You still don't get it, do you?" she gasped between bursts of laughter, blood trickling from her nose. "We've had centuries of practice. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But you've never asked what happens if what kills you makes you stronger?" The chamber grew cold. A shiver ran through the assembled species. The mist. Walkers, who usually floated serenely, were now visibly shaken, their gaseous forms rippling in agitation. The Petra Collective's crystalline bodies flickered with nervous energy. The quantum swimmers, typically so stoic and detached, began to phase nervously between dimensions. Something was wrong. I could feel it, but it was too late. The probes had reached their full intensity, and Alexandra's vital signs began to spike. I ordered the procedure to continue, increasing power to maximum. Let us show this human what true power is, I commanded, though deep within, a sliver of doubt crept into my thoughts. Her body arched violently against the restraints. Her skin began to glow with an otherworldly light, brighter than any star I had ever seen. The containment field's energy surged, and for a moment, I thought the chamber might collapse. Impossible, Miraval whispered, her voice trembling in disbelief. Her cellular structure is changing. Shut down the system, Security Commander Dorn shouted. Something's wrong, but it was too late. Alexandra's body contorted, her skin rippling like liquid metal. Her once human form began to distort, shifting, growing in ways that no living being should be able to. A golden light emanated from her as she hovered within. The restraints, her eyes blazing with an intensity that seemed to bend the very fabric of reality. You wanted to know what happens when you push us? She said, her voice now resonating at frequencies that echoed through space itself. You wanted to know how far we can go? Well, now you'll see. Don't just survive. We evolve. The chamber's quantum screens began to flicker, displaying impossible readings. The instruments malfunctioned, and panic began to spread. Among the council members, the quantum swimmers vibrated at frequencies that indicated deep concern, while the mistwalkers began to dissipate into their gaseous forms, trying to escape the growing instability, but it was too late. As her body swelled with golden energy, Alexandra's form began to multiply. Copies of her appeared, each glowing with the same unearthly light, each one smiling that same impossible smile. She was everywhere. You thought you could destroy us, she said, her voice now filling every corner of the chamber. But we are not your playthings. We are not your victims. We are humanity, and you will learn exactly why we are different. The Galactic Council's greatest minds, the very beings who had conquered countless civilizations, were now helpless. Before her power, the Mistwalkers tried to phase out of existence, but Alexandra pulled them back, solidifying them into crystalline statues. The Petra Collective, once so proud, were now mere pawns in her game. I'm not just going to survive, she said. I'm going to show you what happens when humanity embraces the impossible. The chamber was no longer a place of execution. It was a stage for humanity's greatest performance. And the Galactic Council, once supreme, is now its unwilling audience. Part 2. The transformation, the chamber, once a place of absolute control, was now filled with chaos. The once pristine walls, forged from the matter of neutron stars, now flickered, like dying embers. Energy readings spiraled out of control. Instruments hummed with frantic irregularities, their readings meaningless in the face of the impossible transformation taking place before us. I stood frozen, my limbs heavy, my mind struggling to comprehend what was unfolding. Alexandra Mason, the prisoner we had sought to eliminate, was not dying. No, she was transcending, evolving in ways that defied all understanding. Her body no longer seemed to adhere to the laws of nature. She was changing, growing, splitting. The golden light that now surrounded her seemed to pulse with an intelligence all its own. The entire chamber began to hum with a frequency that vibrated through my very bones, an energy I could not contain or control. It was as though the very fabric of space was bending around her, reshaping itself at her whim. Impossible, murmured Miraval, her voice wavering. Her usually composed tentacles were now trembling, darting around the interface, desperately trying to interpret the data. Her cellular structure is rewriting itself at a quantum level. It's as though she's transcending biology itself. Shut it down, I bellowed, my voice cracking with fear. Now I will not allow this, whatever this is, to continue. My command fell on deaf ears. Systems in the chamber had failed, the containment field flickering, as if reluctant to hold her in any longer. Alexandra's body began to glow brighter, the gold of her aura becoming almost unbearable to look. It hurt to even gaze upon her form, as if it were challenging the very laws of the universe. And then, as if in response to my desperation, she spoke. Her voice was different now, deeper, resonating not just in the air, but within my mind, within my very soul. "You wanted to break me, Ragnar," she said, her words echoing like a cosmic whisper. "But you're only making me stronger. You've given me the gift of death. And now I will show you what happens when death itself bends to humanity's will." Her words were more than just defiance. They were a promise. And as those words left her mouth, I felt the chamber shift. Reality itself seemed to stretch and contract, as if Alexandra's very presence was altering the dimensions around her. I tried to regain control, but the panic had already spread. The quantum swimmers, the most detached species in the galaxy, now showed signs of alarm, their movements erratic as they began to phase in and out of existence. The mistwalkers, usually calm and composed, had abandoned their once proud forms, scattering like frightened insects to the corners of the room. But it was the Petra Collective, the crystallized beings, who were usually the picture of stoic confidence, who were the most visibly affected. They resonated at frequencies I had never heard before, their once beautiful crystal forms, now trembling with something that could only be described as fear of a human, fear of her. Alexandra's form pulsed once, twice, and then exploded outward in a burst of golden light. The shock wave sent every one of us staggering backward, struggling to stay grounded as the entire chamber seemed to warp around us. Her body was no longer confined to the restraints. It was free, unbound, limitless. She had ... evolved, transcended. I had seen galaxies collapse. I had witnessed the birth and death of stars. Nothing in my millennia of experience had prepared me for this. Alexandra's laughter rang out, but it was no longer a sound of cruelty or defiance. It was a sound of victory, of understanding, and of something far more ancient. "Death is a door, Ragnar," she said, her voice now cascading from all directions at once. "Now that I have walked through it, I see the universe in the way you never could. You're just one species among many. And I am the living embodiment of what happens when a species refuses to stay down." With a flick of her wrist, the entire chamber shifted once more. The walls became transparent, revealing the expanse of space beyond, where the Council's fleet of ships floated in formation. And as the light from Alexandra's body flared brightly, I saw the ships begin to shimmer, not in light, but in something ... else. Something foreign. She was controlling them. Not just the ships, but the very fabric of reality itself. This ... This is impossible, my Ravel stuttered. "She's not just manipulating matter, she's manipulating time. Time itself." "You're right," Alexandra said softly, her voice now echoing through every mind in the chamber. "What doesn't kill you ... makes you stronger. But what kills you and brings you back, it makes you infinite." Her golden form began to stretch, forming tendrils of light that reached out, touching the stars themselves. I felt the gravity wells begin to fail, the artificial forces that had held us anchored in place now beginning to waver. Alexandra was rewriting the very rules of space. And with that, the first shift occurred. The chamber that had once been a place of absolute control became a playground for her power. The gravity wells collapsed, and the chamber began to warp in ways no one had thought possible. The walls flickered, then became liquid, then solid again. The air turned to light, and the light became sound. She wasn't just alive. She wasn't just human. She was something else entirely. I watched, helpless, as Alexandra's form grew more powerful, more radiant. She began to multiply, her golden energy fracturing into dozens of copies of herself. Each one wore the same impossible smile. Each one carried the same unearthly power. "You see," she said, "this was never about defeating you. It was never about survival. It was about teaching you. It's teaching all of you what happens when humanity refuses to be dominated." Her golden light intensified, spreading across the chamber. I could hear the screams of the other council members, their voices now lost in the tumult of her overwhelming presence. Then, the final blinding flash, everything stopped. The chamber was silent, and standing in the center, her body glowing with an impossible light, Alexandra Mason smiled. Part 3. Rebirth of the Galaxy and the Days That Followed. The galaxy would never be the same. Alexandra had done the impossible. She had resurrected herself. Yes, but that was just the beginning. The cosmic imbalance she had introduced was far from a temporary disruption. It was a permanent shift in the balance of the universe. The council had been fractured, its leaders reduced to mere pawns in her grand game. But it wasn't just the council that had been affected. The entire galaxy felt her power ripple through the cosmos, as though the very laws of reality had been rewritten. And Alexandra, she was more than human now. She was the embodiment of humanity's greatest potential. She was the answer to the question that had haunted every species across the stars. What happens when we refuse to accept defeat? Humanity had not just survived, they had evolved, and now they were unstoppable. End of Part 2. THI's part continues. The story, as Alexandra breaks free, transcends death and unleashes her true power, changing the course of the galaxy. It sets the stage for the repercussions of her actions. A universe on the edge of transformation. Part 4. The Galactic Reawakening. Itself seemed to stretch, then fold, then ripple outward as Alexandra's golden energy spread throughout the galaxy. I stood in the center of what had once been the Galactic Council's grand execution chamber, now a shifting, unstable space where the laws of physics were no longer relevant. There was a profound stillness in the air, an eerie quiet that felt unnatural, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. The destruction of the council, the once proud rulers of the galaxy, had seemed inevitable. But what Alexandra had done was far beyond a simple rebellion. She had opened a door to a new era, one that no one could have predicted. What happens when we refuse to be dominated? She had asked. Her golden form had seemed to glow brighter with every passing second, each flash of light a reminder of her transcendence. And now I knew the answer. The galaxy would never be the same in the days that followed. The surviving members of the council were left to contemplate the impossible power that Alexandra had unleashed. The Petra Collective, once a symbol of cold, crystalline order, had now turned to shattered fragments of their former selves. The Mistwalkers, their gaseous forms, once so free-flowing, were now trapped in a state of endless turmoil. The Quantum Swimmers, those distant beings of multi-dimensional existence, were left in a state of constant disarray. Even the once mighty Grand Sovereign Yggdrasil, whose scales had shimmered with the arrogance of 1,000 conquests, was now a mere shell of his former self. His body, once a towering figure of superiority, had collapsed under the weight of his newfound understanding, an understanding that he was no longer the dominant force in the galaxy. But it was not just the council that had been affected. Alexandra's influence spread to the furthest corners of the galaxy. The beings that had once trembled under the council's rule now found themselves at the center of a new reality, one where the laws of power and survival were being rewritten. Her golden light had transformed entire civilizations, turning the very stars into living, breathing entities. Even in the farthest reaches of space, the hum of transformation could be felt. Civilizations long thought extinct began to re-emerge, their remains reanimated by the energy Alexandra had released. It was as if the galaxy itself had been reborn, cleansed by the raw power of humanity's will to survive. And through it all, Alexandra stood at the heart of it all, watching. Her form now shifted between multiple realities, existing simultaneously in multiple dimensions, her eyes always burning with that same unshakable confidence. She was no longer just a human. She had transcended that label. She was something more, something that had become, as she put it, infinite. But despite her power, there was no joy in her eyes, no satisfaction, no victory. Only something deeper, something that until now I had failed to understand. Purpose. as the galaxy shifted, as new realities took shape around Alexandra's will, she spoke once again. Her voice echoed across the expanse of space, carried by the very fabric of time. Itself, this is not about victory. This is about evolution. Humanity has not just survived the impossible, we've become the impossible. Her words were a declaration, not of triumph, but of something far greater. Humanity's capacity to adapt, to evolve, to shape not just their own future. They Self, Part 5. The New Order as I stood, in the ruined remnants of the Council's once immense chamber, I found myself questioning everything I had known. For millennia, we, the Galactic Council, had ruled with an iron grip. We had crushed civilizations beneath our feet, wiped out entire species without a second thought. We were the unquestionable authority in the galaxy, but now it was clear the tables had turned. The age of the Council was over. Alexandra had reshaped the very essence of reality. The galaxy no longer bent to our will, it bent to hers. At first, the rest of the galaxy's species had been hesitant, unsure of the changes that were unfolding before them. The Petra Collective, the Mistwalkers, the Quantum Swimmers, they all retreated into the shadows, reluctant to accept the new order. Some sought to flee, others plotted their resistance. But there was no escape. There was no hiding from the new power that had swept across the stars. It was not just a question of survival anymore. It was a question of understanding. Those who resisted Alexandra's influence quickly learned that humanity was not just a fleeting, primitive species. It was a species destined to reshape the galaxy. I watched as entire fleets of ships, once the pride of the Galactic Council, were repurposed. The great warships that had been used to subjugate the galaxy were now tools for peace re-engineered by Alexandra's will. She was no longer focused on destruction. She was focused on creation, on transformation. The ships now served as conduits for spreading her message, for teaching the galaxy the true nature of what it meant to evolve. We cannot undo what has been done. I heard one of the remaining council members whisper. His voice trembled as he spoke, his form still shaking with disbelief. Alexandra has changed everything. There is no going back. And he was right. The galaxy had been forever altered. What had once been an empire of fear was now a constellation of hope. Or at least, that was what Alexandra hoped to achieve. I had seen it in her eyes. The desire to heal, to create something new. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about understanding. Her form shifted once again, this time becoming a glowing, translucent figure that towered over the remaining council members. She no longer needed the physicality of her human form. She was everywhere, all at once, existing in every dimension, controlling every facet of reality with a flick of her hand. You all wanted to know what happens when humanity defies the white odds, she said, her voice now a part of the very fabric of space-time. Well, you're about to learn just what it means to truly evolve. Her golden light reached out, and I watched in awe as entire star systems were reformed. Planets once devoid of life were now teeming with new possibilities. The energy she had released began to heal the wounds caused by millennia of war and conquest. It was as if she were rewriting the history of the galaxy, erasing the scars left by those who had come before her. Part 6. A new beginning. Months passed, and the galaxy began to stabilize. Alexandra's transformation of the universe had not come without its costs, but it had also brought with it an unprecedented opportunity for growth. Those species that had once been subjugated now found themselves able to chart their own destinies. The remnants of the Galactic Council had been restructured, but not in the way we had expected. Alexandra's influence had infused every decision, every law, every command. No longer was there a need for power or control. The very foundation of the galaxy had been changed. And I had become a witness to the impossible, and now I stood alongside Alexandra as she began to rebuild, not just the galaxy, but the very nature of existence itself. But even now, after everything that had happened, I could not shake the thought that lingered in my mind. Was humanity truly finished evolving? Or had this merely been the beginning of something far greater? a question that would echo throughout the stars for eons to come. End of Part 3. This section continues Alexandra's journey, as she reshapes the galaxy, not through destruction, but through rebirth and transformation. As her influence grows, the galaxy is forced to adapt to the new order, for her ultimate goal being one of healing and evolution. Part 7. The legacy of humanity, the galaxy. Once fractured by endless wars, stood on the edge of something profound. Alexandra's golden light had transformed not only the galaxy's physical structure, but also the very essence of existence. What had once been a cold and calculated universe, governed by alien forces and hierarchical empires, was now evolving into something far more chaotic, yet far more alive. I stood in the midst of this rebirth, no longer a high executor, no longer a servant to the Galactic Council, was an observer now, a witness to the birth of a new era. One forged not by fear and domination, but by resilience and unity. It was strange, watching the galaxies twist and bend before me. What was once a rigid, ordered cosmos, structured by those who wielded power, now flowed freely, its vastness full of infinite possibilities. Alexandra had not just defied death. She had remade the galaxy in humanity's image, one of growth, adaptation, and, most importantly, creation. I had heard whispers in the outer colonies. Some spoke of the rebirth of entire species, their once dead civilizations now reawakened by Alexandra's golden energy. The new alliances formed from the ashes of the old empires were stronger than I could have ever predicted. Even the once dominant Petra Collective, which had once viewed humanity as insignificant, now found themselves negotiating, evolving, working alongside humans as equals, not subjugates. But not all species embraced the change. Some had resisted, reluctant to give up the old ways of domination and control. Yet even their resistance had changed. It was no longer about overthrowing Alexandra's influence. It was about understanding how to adapt to it. Resistance, in a sense, had evolved. The galaxy was teetering on the edge of something truly remarkable. A new civilization built not on the foundation of conquest, but on cooperation and shared progress. Alexandra's influence had redefined the meaning of what it meant to be alive in this universe. Her resurrection, her rebirth, had paved the way for a new era, where death was no longer an end, but a beginning. Part 8. A universe transformed. The Council's grand fortress, once the center of power for millennia, was now nothing more than a hollow shell. It had been repurposed into a new symbol of unity, not just for the surviving species of the galaxy, but for all the new beings that had emerged in the wake of Alexandra's resurrection. It now served as a place of reflection, a museum of sorts, where history was not merely taught, but experienced. Alexandra had made it clear, this new universe would not be one of passive existence. Every being in the galaxy had the potential to evolve, to create, to contribute. No longer would they be shackled by the old ways of thinking. Humanity had shown the galaxy that it was possible to break free from death, from oppression, from stagnation. Now, the rest of the universe was learning how to do the same. And through all of this, Alexandra had remained ever present. Not. In a literal sense, she no longer needed her human form. She existed beyond it, beyond all limitations, in a state of pure energy and thought. She was the embodiment of the very concept of evolution, ever-changing, or expanding. In the years that followed, she would often manifest herself in different forms, speaking to the leaders of new civilizations, guiding them, teaching them. Her voice, once a simple whisper, now resonated throughout the galaxy, carrying with it the lessons of humanity's journey. It was not just a voice of power, but one of wisdom, wisdom born from pain, from struggle, from death. I was dead, Ragnar, she said one day, her voice reverberating through the very core of my being. But what I learned from that death was more than anyone ever expected. Death is not a finality, it is a passage. And when we accept that passage, we are freed to become anything. Part 9. The future of humanity as the galaxy began to stabilize. Under Alexandra's influence, I began to see her vision take shape. Humanity, once thought to be nothing more than a fleeting species in the grand tapestry of the universe, was now at the forefront of that evolution. Their potential, our potential, was limitless. The new order was a strange one. There were no borders, no empires. Every species, from the most advanced to the most primitive, was working together to push the boundaries of what was possible. The galaxy had become a laboratory of sorts, space for creative expression and scientific discovery. But even more striking was the evolution of the human spirit. We had learned not just to adapt to our surroundings, but to change our surroundings, to shape them to our will. As a species, we had never been afraid of the unknown. It was in our nature to explore, to seek, to understand. Alexandra had shown us how far that desire could take us. She had taken death, the one thing that had always been humanity's greatest fear, and turned it into a tool for growth. But the story was not over. Alexandra had not yet revealed her true plan. There was something deeper, something more profound, waiting on the horizon. A new challenge, one that would test everything humanity had learned, everything we had become. I felt it in the air, a shift, a presence, something far greater than any of us could comprehend. Alexandra's influence was not merely about reshaping the galaxy or even humanity. It was about preparing us for something beyond our wildest dreams. Ragnar. Alexandra's voice came to me again. This time not as a whisper, but as a clarion. Call, the true test is yet to come, but we will face it together. Humanity, the galaxy, all of us, we are not done evolving. The universe is vast, and we will chart its course. I looked up at the stars, the endless expanse before me. The future had always seemed so uncertain, so unreachable. But now it felt within reach. Humanity had transcended death, and in doing so, had unlocked a power greater than any empire, any war, any conquest. The universe. Once a cold and indifferent expanse was now alive. It was waiting for us to take the next step. Asterisk and I, for the first time in my existence, was ready. Part 10. The infinite journey, the galaxies that once lay dormant, now buzzed with energy. Their stars burning brighter, their planets teeming with the energy of life. It was no longer just the Milky Way. The entire universe had come to life. Each corner of it an invitation to explore, to discover, evolve. Humanity had done the impossible. We had defied death. We had shattered the chains of oppression, and now we stood on the precipice of something truly unimaginable. But this was only the beginning. The universe was vast, and its mysteries were endless. With Alexandra leading the way, we would venture forth, not just as conquerors, but as creators. We would evolve. We would change. And we would become everything we were destined to be. End of story. This concludes the narrative. From the initial defiance of death to the ultimate transformation of the galaxy and humanity's future. Alexandra's journey reshapes not only her species, but the entire universe, creating a new age of collaboration and exploration. Her message of evolution, survival, and limitless potential remains at the heart of the story, leaving room for future stories and endless possibilities.